Good afternoon. My name's Andrew. How are you? Everyone awake? Enjoyed lunch?
Yep.
Very good. If I put you to sleep, I'm sorry. Alright, so I'm just going to get into this. So 25th of January 1999. Anyone remember what happened this day? Besides the impending doom of Y2K, setting in, realizing we have less than a year now. Scott McNeely introduced Ginny, which is the Java networking interface. And his whole idea was everything should be on the internet all the time, everything should be networked all the time. And but no one remembers anything about this press announcement. No one remembers anything about Ginny. No one remembers anything. All they remember is that he said, "You have zero privacy anyway. Get over it." That's what everyone remembers from the entire event. I'm not quite sure that's what Sun hoped would happen, but it's what stuck. What he really meant was, you have no security anyway. You really have no privacy anyway, and privacy is contextual. What people think of as privacy is, I want my privacy, but they want it from specific facets of their lives, not privacy from everything. Otherwise, you're a hermit who lives in the woods with an outhouse. You have no security. This is really prescient for 1999 to come out, and we'll start going into how this happens. So back in the heady days of 2004, 2005, we had just a few data breaches. The size of the circle matches roughly the size of what was leaked. 2005 we have some more, 2006 we have some more. This is 10 years ago. We must have gotten better. We must have figured out that after the first couple of breaches, things need to be tied down, locked up, and secured. Not so much. So over the subsequent few years, we had more breaches, and they got larger, and they got more devastating, and they got across more companies and more countries. Most of this is U.S. focused, but it's still everywhere. In the U.S. Army, various U.S. law enforcement agencies, Department of Defense, the military, when these start becoming open targets and having their data leak, something's very wrong. You would think that they would spend all the money in the world to protect their soldiers. However, it keeps going. So this is the past 2 years alone. And we have Yahoo, which just came out, turns out it was actually 2014. There's 500 million accounts. Voter databases, it gets more and more critical, more and more healthcare, less financial, more just dumping because information wants to be free, or so people think. So we have the Internet of Things. This is a lightly censored image of Pornhub on a refrigerator at Home Depot. So people always think that refrigerators, Internet of Things, must be running some secure operating system. They can't possibly run common everyday websites. On the one hand, Pornhub has worked so well. It works in this is basically a mobile environment. I'm sure they did that for their target customer. And at the same time, your refrigerator is now running a full mobile operating system that is just as infectable as everything else. Except how do you update it? You're totally dependent on, just like your phone, you're totally dependent on your provider to provide you updates. I don't know when Samsung will roll out the anti-Pornhub feature of their refrigerators, given what they've seen from the, no offense to people with Samsung here, but given the reaction to the Note 7 response and the fact that one blew up on a plane yesterday, I think the tech industry as a whole needs to learn about recalls and how to do them quickly and safely. So what happens when your refrigerator doesn't run Pornhub and instead has default credentials and participates in an attack on Brian Krebs' website? Krebs Against Security is a security blogger. He spends most of his time going into the dark corners of the internet and then writing about it. So naturally he gets a lot of people who don't like him who then attack him back. What you have here is, what's highlighted here is basically this is an 800 gigabit DDoS against his website. And people reported their bursts of over a terabit. This is the largest DDoS we've ever seen. And I also find it hilarious that a command line is still the easiest way to get this data. No matter how much GUI you have, you can do hideous piping commands in Unix to get the format you want. It's faster than trying to pipe a GUI. So what happens? even Akamai throws up the white flag and says we surrender. They've hosted Krebs on security.com for a long time. They've done DDoS protection for free, and now they basically just said, look, we give in. A terabit DDoS started affecting internet exchanges, started affecting their other customers, and it cost them a lot of money to provide him cover. And they basically said, well, you need to leave. Like, you become such a huge target. We're under attack all the time. This is a horrible situation. You as a company are now under the thumb of some guy or a woman with a botnet under control of 145,000 security cameras. We've always heard that security cameras, they're insecure, no one changed the passwords, anyone can take them over, but they run such a minimal operating system, no one could ever do anything bad with it. Well, they just exploited TCP to do SYN attacks, force a response, send the response somewhere else. It's a basic denial of service attack. Do that with 145,000 cameras across the world, and you've now just taken that website and potentially put a multi-billion-dollar business at risk. So, are we innovating? That's sort of a rhetorical question. The criminals are. The criminals are innovating far faster than we are. And how they do it, and why they do it, and how easily they do it has been sort of fascinating for me for the past couple of years. Looking into cybercrime, looking into transnational organized crime, how quickly they come up with ideas, implement ideas, work together. Criminals are criminals. For the most part, they will backstab each other, they will sell each other out, they will turn each other into the police, they will SWAT each other. Everything you can imagine, they do each other, yet they still seem to get stuff done faster than we do. So, the stories like this that come out, cybercrime is the next entrepreneurial business path. If you can figure out how to legitimately turn your cybercrime organization into a real company, you can make a lot of money at it. You could outstrip most cybersecurity companies. So here's an example. This is a darknet, it's a Tor.onion site. I've been doing research in the darknet for 2 years now, just exploring it, seeing what's out there, indexing it. And this is an ebook site. All the DRM is stripped off all the ebooks. There are a couple 100,000 books here. This alone should not surprise anybody. Anyone with some software talent can strip DRM off your ebooks, get it for free. What's interesting is that who they link to, and that this is on Tor, so you need Tor to get to it. It's a .onion. It doesn't exist in the clear web, yet they have all these links to all these other public sites. The most interesting one is this one over here, the Python book reader. If they will let you read all their ebooks for free, just to highlight that. They will let you read all their ebooks for free if you go to this website. When you go to that website, you get served ads in your book reader. So they are profiting off the ad networks as you read the free books. They don't actually charge for the books, which is interesting in itself, probably because no one would pay for it, or you wouldn't trust any payment system they have, so they use ads displays as their payment system. Also interesting is that everyone thinks cyber criminals are some mastermind. They link to Bulgarian Wikipedia, because when you go to wikipedia.org, it defaults to whatever your native language is in your browser, so most likely they are Bulgarian. So let's go to more calmer time. This is me at 10 years old. I'd just been through computer camp, and I had no idea what the heck I was doing in the world. Obviously, it's 1981, the super cool t-shirt. This was one of the first computers I had. This is a DEC Rainbow. It was the revolutionary personal computer that everyone always wanted. It had 2 different processors in it, these super cool floppy drives, and the 6-inch screen that my phone, I think our phones are bigger than this screen is now. Our phones are definitely far more powerful than this whole computer is. These are the first languages I had to learn. My father was an electrician in the Navy. He spent a lot of time in Kansas and Arizona. You might think that there's no ocean in Kansas and Arizona. He had top secret clearance, and to this day, I only know he was an electrician. Yet I had to learn assembly and Ada as my first programming languages. Most people had to learn BASIC. Most people's first programming languages were peek and poke on an Atari, trying to learn BASIC to make it make silly noises. This is Ada. This was the government language that came out in 1979, 80 at the time, and that's MIPS assembly. I've since forgotten everything I've ever learned about assembly and ADA. This was the internet. Network connections were acoustic couplers. You dialed in at 300 bits per second, not kilobits, 300 bits. The thing that DEC Rainbow is about as powerful as that modem was. And you would type, and you type your whole command and wait for it to appear on the other end. However, it gets you into X25 networks. You know, before the internet was really big and popular, X25 was what all the providers used. There was no security. Everyone was trusted, all these companies were trusted, and when you unleash a 14-year-old on an X25 network that's wide open, I met the FBI at a very young age, who had no idea what I did. All they know is they had some access log that said someone from my own account, because you're 14, you don't think like this. I logged into my own account, used my own account to get into all these other companies' stuff and explore their systems. And apparently someone noticed, because I explored a defense contractor system, who was the only one who had auditing on to look at logins. I didn't tell them, well, actually I connected like 40 other people, but you just caught this one, so yeah, that's what I did. It's also not a conversation you want to have with your parents at 14. What did you do? Why is the FBI here? So as Mike said, I went to Westboro High School. I went to Framingham State University now, not college. And what I went to school though was for biology. I was always interested in the neurobiology of behavior. What's the bath of chemicals in your brain that makes you do things? And I still am, but computers paid vastly more. So I did that. The oldest post I can find, because everything on the internet is forever, is this. One of my nicknames when I was exploring X25 networks was Crazy Loon. And this is a news group, not a mailing list, for people who still remember news groups. This is back before Linux had a DHCP client, when TCP/IP was still not a thing. You still had to install a TCP/IP stack to figure out how to connect to this internet thing. And there's my innocent, hey, how do I do this? So I since went on to work for a bunch of companies in Massachusetts. TechTarget, I was one of the first employees. Analog Devices, I was definitely not one of the first employees. But all these places are in Massachusetts. Tor, you know, we started in Massachusetts, it's grown to what it is today. I left about a year ago to go work for a slightly different company. So here's what I do today. Farsight is real-time DNS intelligence. You know, it's a California company, but I won't mention that too much. I work, Swellbox Dale is my own consulting company for exploring the dark web. So when I run into law enforcement, I have a company between me and them, which doesn't really help much actually. Thorn, I work with them to do digital analysis of human trafficking. Emerge is domestic violence. Each One Teach One is recent. It's been the past 2 years to help train women and girls in technology so that they have better options in life beyond just working at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or getting married. Which those are all fine career paths if that's what you want to do, but many of them would like to have a stronger career path and be able to have the ability to learn technology and, you know, make far more money than a part-time worker. Throughout all these companies, I travel around the world. I used to spend a lot of time in Sweden. Sweden's startup culture is very different than Boston, which is very different than California. Sweden is socialized government. Everything's taken care of, so people take far greater risks. If you think California has some crazy startups that make no business sense whatever, Sweden also has those, except they're very polite about it, very professional about it, and they're an engineering culture, so everything is designed to the 27th degree. Which is fantastic when you want to drive their cars or take their public transit, but when you just want to watch a video on the internet, you probably shouldn't have to install 27 pieces of software to get it to look just right. So innovation, what is innovation? And why are the criminals so good at it? Basically it's new ideas. They don't come constrained with all these laws. They don't come constrained with preconceived notions. Most criminals come constrained with simply, I want to make money, how do I get there the fastest? Conveniently, that's how a lot of cybersecurity companies start as well, is, you know, we need to protect something, but I also want to make money at it. So they're not that vastly different. The other idea here is that, you know, innovation is always some poor person sweating away in a lab for years and decades to come up with an idea. That's a myth. It's a fine myth by the people who succeeded because they seem to forget their entire team. You need an entire team to innovate. Having you're stuck in your own blinders, you're stuck in your own head. You need to be able to get out of your head and get differing opinions. And I'm not, diversity helps, but having diversity of people who all grew up in North America gives you far less diversity of people who grew up all over the world, or when you travel the world and talk to people. The iHub in Kenya is fascinating because the way they think about problems, I would never think about that way. And it's mostly because I come from Massachusetts, I come from a Western culture, and when you go to this culture, or when you go to like Wushan in China, they have very different ideas, things that you would not even grasp of how to approach things. And you can get it, you can learn it quickly, but the point is that the sheer diversity and the difference of cultures is what matters. It helps you innovate far faster. For an example, here's 5 people that were thrown together, all right, 6 people that were thrown together for a hackathon where we were the winning team. We met each other that morning and we put together a mobile app for the World Bank. The idea was everyone had very different skills. They all came from different parts of the World Bank around the world, and we came up with a simple app that really seems really simple in the forefront, but no one thought of it when we first started. And we were all trying to sort of developing towards the exact same goal, and we were the one that won it because we just came up with this creative solution that the World Bank has been looking at implementing. So, innovation, diversity of cultures, diversity of ideas, and moving quick. This is a criminal network. You'll notice it's not highly structured, rigid, or anything like that. These people work together. This is actually a drug network, but everyone works together. They all work to each other. They all connect into each other. Sure, there are some people who call the shots who have more, connections than others, but they all seem to work together, and they all just get things done. They all move incredibly quick. Having explored the darker parts of the world with law enforcement, you realize how easy it is to do criminal activity. In order to make this work, so let's take this as a criminal. As a criminal, someone sets up and says, hey, I just want to do this. This is to serve non-prescription drugs and ads across the internet. It involves email, websites, and payment networks. So this is the global network that a criminal network will do. It will use a botnet to spam all the ads, and then you can see the advertising, the click support, and realization. Each one of these people is stratified, just like a billion-dollar company. Everyone has their job, has only one thing to do, and they don't even all speak the same language. They use Google Translate a lot to figure out how to speak between different cultures. They don't all know each other. In many cases, that's by design, because they want the deniability to say, well, I don't know who this guy is. I just know I sent it here. In order for a legitimate non-criminal company to do this stuff, think about what has to happen. I'll take my own Farsight Security. When we want to work with a partner, first thing you have to do is sign an NDA. So both have to sign an NDA, legal teams have to review it. That takes a week or so, or if the legal team's fast, it's within days. Then you have to sign a master services agreement. Then you have to sign partnership agreements. Then you have to haggle over reselling and rights and all this stuff. All this stuff takes, anywhere between a week and a month to get done with any smaller company. Larger companies, I have contracts that are still in the master services agreement phase, which are 9 months waiting on legal to go through it. If we were a criminal enterprise, we'd be broke trying to do this stuff. Criminals will set this entire thing up in under 2 days. There are no agreements, there's no legalization, they just move fluid, fast, and they also rip each other off. But they do end up making money. Everyone has a role, everyone makes their money. This is how the FBI approaches cybercrime. I pick on the FBI because I work with them a lot. But it's highly structured, everything has to go up or down, mostly down. And there is not a lot of cross-functionality, cross-working together. This is in vast difference to what you saw, the criminal networks that are just everywhere. And the innovation here is really in PowerPoint, in moving one division to another, as opposed to getting things done, getting technology adapted. The FBI and most global law enforcement has picked up quickly. Cyber division is almost a quaint notion now because every crime involves cyber. Having just people who are cyber experts is fantastic, but now you have cyber in every criminal investigation because no no criminals stay away from the internet. There are no offline criminals anymore. So here's an example of innovation. Operation Shrouded Horizon took down Darkode. Darkode was a Carter's forum where they, all these Carters around the world got together. They all decided they were going to speak English or Russian. So there's a lot of Google Translate and horrible translations. But they got together, they hosted a forum. It was called darkode.com. It could not be any more out in the open. It's hosted in Russia, so most people wouldn't take it down. Global law enforcement got together, and this is innovation from a law enforcement perspective. They work with commercial companies and all these different countries to take down the website, identify the people, and take down the big ring to hopefully take down the entire forum. So there was a lot of press about this. They took it all down. They did a great job. It's about a 2-year operation, and then 2 weeks later it pops back up because the criminals who didn't get caught said, well, now we know what not to do. So let's innovate. And they moved everything to, so this is actually a .onion site. They moved to Tor, and then law enforcement was sort of like, fantastic, now what do you do? And so what they did was they go back to investigate everything. And the point was that the admins of the site it took a week for them to figure out how to reset it all back up, make all the connections they need for all these parts of the operation, and get back online and get back in business, which they did. So, on that depressing note, we have locally, according to Xconomy, we have 67 cybersecurity companies in this area. They are raising tons of money. They're all doing well. They're in various sizes, from startup to large enterprises. They all focus on different parts of the cyber criminal chain. Some are mobile, some are endpoint protection, some are data analytics. So we are innovating, we are making change. The state has actually gotten into it, and the state has its own Twitter feed. Do you know October was Cybersecurity Awareness Month? I actually didn't know that. On the one hand, this is fantastic. I love that Massachusetts has this and it's out there. Not too many people follow them. They've got 800 something followers out of a few million people in the state. And it's also, on one hand, I love it. On the other hand, it's the most depressing feed ever, because all it is breach, 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 exploit, breach, breach, exploit, breach, 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 exploit. How to not be a victim. And it's great that we have it. On the other hand, the news is just so depressing. So what do? A lot of what you see in the press is that the Russians are hacking the election, allegedly. The North Koreans broke into Sony, and you have nation states coming after you. I'm not going to survive an attack by any nation state. I don't care how small it is. This is North Korean army. They have their own cyber teams, just like we have our own cyber teams. This is nation state stuff happening on the internet against companies. An individual company is not going to survive an attack from a nation state. If you're targeted by the NSA, for say, you've already lost. Before you even realize it's the NSA, you've already lost. Now imagine that for the other agencies out there that are not so friendly enemies, and you're in deep trouble. Here are the 4 you see in the news all the time. So on the upper left is the Chinese Ministry of State Security. They are the overall agency who has cyber teams in universities and stuff doing nothing but hacking, PLA, all that. On the lower left is the Russian SVR. They are the Foreign Intelligence Service. They're another overarching agency that has activity for all sorts of attacks. In the middle is the Iranian. It's Ministry of State Security, but somehow it's moist. And they're also blamed for a whole bunch of stuff. And then on the right is North Korea, Best Korea, and their cyber teams are all attacking you. When you look at the media, it's almost always some lone hacker who does this stuff. Much like the myth of lone innovators, it's never a lone hacker. They always have support, they've always stratified. Anyone who is a lone hacker is trying to show off, and then will get piled upon by all the Russian criminals who are like, well, I can do that better, I can do this better, why'd you cut me out of the deal? What's going on here? This is actually the friendliest hacker I could find. Usually it's some dark shrouded face. So the real risk, though, regardless of what the media says, is your partners. As a company, these women are like, fantastic, we just signed a deal with these two guys, we're going to make tons of money off our partnership. What they don't realize is these two guys have no firewalls, have no security, because they think it's just a cost center, and there's no point to paying for any stuff. What their risk is now is that they've set up a trusted connection, whether it's over internet, or they actually pull physical lines, like banks do, between each other. Your security is now as secure as that line is, and that company is behind it. There are entire companies now, BitSight is one of them in Massachusetts, that assess third-party risk. How risky are they? Where have your partner's IP addresses shown up? If your partner IP addresses in their network constantly show up on infected malware lists or whatever, that should be a red flag to you to say, hey, you should clean up your stuff, or you should charge a lot more, or you should take out far more insurance for when you get breached because something comes through them. So we've raised, these 67 companies have raised $3.6 billion. That's a lot of money. And typically I'm not going to use the war terminology here, but both sides, the criminals are raising this much money too. And so we have to raise this much money to fight them. And this is where, there's plenty of venture capital, there's plenty of money out there where people are looking at it saying, what can we do to fight this? And the venture capital approach is to put their money in a bunch of pots and hope one of them wins. Maybe two of them win. If they're really lucky, three of them win. Otherwise, the goal is to just put the money in, let these companies show what they can do, see who innovates, and the ones who innovate may win or at least get acquired. So there is a lot of press about Massachusetts and cybersecurity. We are doing a lot of great work. There's an actual cybersecurity commission, Advanced Cybersecurity Center, that does a lot to try to get just networking, just like not like MassTLC, but sort of to focus on getting people together. Economy has a lot of articles about this, and people are moving to Boston, which is counter to what many people think. I almost wonder if it's more people move in Boston in the spring or if they move in the winter. So if they move in the winter, you really want to be here. And innovation takes a community. In order to do this, as I've said, you need product managers. It's not just a lone inventor with some brilliant idea. That helps. But then they need product managers, developers, coders, designers, all this stuff to work together to build the thing. This is exactly how cyber criminals work. A criminal says, hey, I got an idea, I got an angle, I need someone to do distribution, I need someone to do the design, I need someone to make me a web page, I need someone to handle processing payments. You need all this stuff to innovate. They naturally go wherever they can find people to work with. So they tend to be far more global, have far more diverse opinions. And this is where we're at now, is we're starting to get there. Cybersecurity companies are getting there. And we are that community. Everyone here is part of that community. We all have different ideas. We all have different specialties and expertise, and we should all use them to work towards the same goals, whatever your goal is. My bent to cybersecurity, but there's robotics, there's insurance, there's financial technology, there's all this stuff that having innovation comes from within, comes from us, and does not come from any one person who you have to hopefully hire some brilliant person out of college. And that's it. Thank you. Are there any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Oh, come on, there's got to be something.
Sure.
When you started working with the FBI again, did they bring up the thing when you were 14?
No. Officially, that goes off your record because you're a minor. I believe back then, because it's in paper, it probably is off my record, but now if you're caught, even though they say it's off the record, I would guarantee everything's safe forever. Because why not? It's just bits. Yes?
Distributed innovation on the cybersecurity side, is that the solution to deal with the kind of innovation that's happening on the criminal side?
I think...
Repeat the question, please.
Is distributed innovation on the cybersecurity side where we should be going? Is that your question? Yeah. I think yes. I think it's worth trying. I think it's worth, I work for a distributed company. Tor is a distributed company. It's incredibly hard to run a distributed company because of time zones, because of cultures, because of language, and because video technology is infinitely infuriating. It never works when you want it to. It never works how well you want it to. But chat, phone calls, all this stuff still works. It's still, when you look at productivity, the most productive times both at Tor and at Farsight are when we're all together. We have company meetings, we meet somewhere in the world, and having 30 people in a room gets a lot more done than distributed endless email and chats and all this other stuff, phone calls and all that. But I think that having the diversity of opinion is fantastic, and having the different cultures and experiences of what people think about, how they think about a problem helps innovate far quicker. And so long as you come into it with an open mind and say, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to try it, that's what seems to work well. Yeah?
How do you see cloud computing from security perspective?
How do I see what?
Cloud computing, cloud computing.
Oh, how do I see cloud computing? Cloud computing is just someone else's computer. No offense to the cloud companies here. You know, it's distributed, it's a cloud. It's sort of the same ways you would secure your own infrastructure, your data center, is the same way you should think about cloud. You know, some of that is also risk management. You're going to put your files, you're going to put your core sensitive data on someone else's network, and you hope that, you know, they have insurance and they've gone through best practices, or even better practices than best practices, to secure your data so they don't accidentally leak it. There are a lot of companies, two-ish locally, who have been working on like CryptZone and others who are working on sort of, it's on the cloud, but it's in your secure container. And you know, you can then move the secure container somewhere else if that server goes down and gets breached, whatever. But there's more innovation needed there. Yep, thank you.
And do you see advanced encryption as a force for good or a tool for disaster?
I see this both. So I was at the Aspen Institute Cybersecurity Summit yesterday, and it's interesting because the NSA repeatedly said that encryption is really not their concern. They sort of see it going spotty, but otherwise they're not really too worried about encryption. And the FBI repeatedly said encryption is our nightmare. Encryption constantly stymies investigations and it makes us go dark. So going spotty versus going dark. On the one hand, I take that to mean the NSA is not worried about encryption because they can break it all. And so they're not going to actually say that. I mean, I wouldn't say that, because or it's just posturing so that when like the Russians and the Chinese say we're heavily encrypted, make them, you know, it's a whole psychological operation there. But the FBI has been pretty clear that encryption, you know, you saw the iPhone thing, they constantly run into it with these technologies that are heavily encrypted end to end, and in some cases the user legitimately doesn't know the passcode to unlock those things. It's tied to, you know, two-factor authentication, or three-factor or four-factor, and so it does get in the way of law enforcement. However, there's plenty of other ways. You know, other countries who are less moral will just put a gun to your head and say, type the password in. And if you don't know, we'll throw you in jail until you remember it. And for the business side, though, everyone wants to secure their information. Both the NSA and the FBI have come out and said, we want you to have strong encryption. I mean, the director of the FBI encrypts his laptop when he travels. He's the director of the FBI. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about border crossings and that. But he still does it just because it's what you've heard, is encrypt your laptop. So most likely your laptop's going to get stolen, not someone to hack into it. So if they get stolen, at least it's encrypted. I think that encryption still has a long way to go. I think that quantum encryption is really where the next thing is going to be at. It's still in its infancy, but it's vastly stronger and vastly easier to implement. Right now, encryption is really CPU and memory heavy. It takes a lot of power to do that. Even with your phones, it's tough to do that. If any of you encrypted your phone, you notice it's slower. It's demonstrably slower because it's got to do all these calculations all the time. Quantum crypto is much quicker and much smaller bit sizes, so you can do things far faster. And once you have the Internet of Things using quantum crypto, heavily encrypted, talking to each other, and serving a Pornhub, then you both have a panacea of a growth model and a nightmare for law enforcement and trying to secure your devices. Yeah.
If cyber criminals are acting more like corporations, to what extent are corporations acting more like cyber criminals that are after them in response?
So the question is, if cyber criminals are acting more like corporations, what are corporations acting more like cyber criminals? Yes, in that I have worked with a number of companies who you meet someone, you meet them at Black Hat, you meet them at a conference, you just call them up and say, hey, we see this, we need your help. Magically, a handshake is still what it takes to get most business done. And then the lawyers get involved and then all these papers get signed. But for the most part, if you have an active thing that's time pressure, companies are willing to work together, and they do, you know, it's very much like the cyber criminal world of you meet, you talk, You say, here's what we're going to do. You assess if you can trust the person or not, and then if you do, you move on. And you start working together and you start solving the problem. This is how a lot of law enforcement operations work, is that before all this stuff happens, the breached company or the infected company or the company that needs help will reach out to whoever law enforcement officer they know and say, hey, we need some help, can you come help us? And then the lawyers get involved and then all this stuff happens afterwards. But usually it comes down to the individual to make the contact. Do they trust each other or not? If they do, they start working together quickly. So that does help to take down criminal activity very quickly. Yes?
Where do you see, or is there a merge, or you see a future in merging of cybersecurity and digital forensics? Are they now one thing or still separate?
So the question is, where do I see a merging of cybersecurity and digital forensics? Have any of you read the PCAST report? No, of course not. It's a presidential commission on science and technology. It's a long report about forensics, where they basically said a lot of the forensics today are not scientifically proven, and digital forensics is the #1 field. They said is just a total mess. I think that as people need to understand computers, you need to understand what's going on inside the computer. For whatever type of computer it is, phone, Internet of Things, desktop, servers, cloud, whatever. As they start learning more about how this stuff works and the traces you leave behind, that digital forensics will get much better and it will be repeatable. Most of the problem that the Presidential Commission identified is that it's not repeatable. And you can't just simply say, well, we examined this hard drive and this one time and we found this data on it, so therefore that proves whatever. And in the court's view, and the commission's view, was that you need to be analyzed the same hard drive, the same time, the same way, a statistically significant number of times, get the exact same result, then it's scientifically proven, not just once. And who's to say that when you clone the hard drive, you didn't change the data? Who's to say when you went to read the hard drive or whatever device it is, the memory, you didn't, just by reading, you changed the state of the data. And that's a lot of what that effect is. So I think that we'll get better at it. Right now, it's all forensic labs are buried under an avalanche of data, and they can't keep up with their requests. And this is why you see, I've worked with them, and even the FBI's forensic lab or DHS forensic lab will say, yeah, we've got a 1-year backlog. And so this is why your court cases take forever. Unless you're willing to pay, there are financial companies will say, great, we pay you $20,000, can be done this week? And the answer is almost always yes. You go to a commercial lab, you have them do it, and you give them the data, and then some defense lawyer tears apart the forensics, saying, well, they analyzed the drive just once, it's not repeatable. Do it twice, do it 3 times. Prove to me it's the same result every time. So I think forensics needs a lot of work, and we'll get better. I mean, it's what's state of the art today. I think from just basing on the Presidential Commission's report, it's not repeatable. And from what I've seen in court cases, you haven't been an expert witness in them, you come up with a huge tranche of data, and with the hope that 25% of it the judge allows. And that right there should tell you that judges don't believe 75% of what they see, at least for digital stuff, or they don't understand it, or both. Yeah.
Globally, where are the biggest centers of criminal talent, and how are they being developed?
Where are the largest centers of criminal talent, and how are they being developed? Well, everywhere is the reality. You hear about Eastern Europe a lot, you hear about South America a lot. That's because they're the most successful. The drug war has improved a lot of criminals' technical capabilities because the drug cartels, don't want to keep their money, and everything happens on the internet today. So they've done a lot to promote that. Southeast Asia is another big spot because they don't really have, they have different copyright laws and understandings of intellectual property than we do, and it's much more fluid there. So I don't want to, there's no one name. I can tell you that, in Boston, there's plenty of cybercrime that goes on. It's mostly, though, it seems it's always foreign. And when I go to like Bulgaria and places like that, they say the U.S. is the pit of all evil for cybercrime. So it's sort of contextual where you look. Yeah, one more.
What would you say to consumers of all this?
What would I say to consumers of all this? That's fine. I was talking about that at lunch. So I have a smart thermostat in my house. I'm fully aware it can be hackable. I'm fully aware I can come home, my house will be like 300 degrees, or it'll be frigid in the middle of the winter and freeze up my air conditioning unit. However, the benefit still outweighs the risk to me. You know, I did a risk analysis, whether I did it correctly or not. I think for consumers, you know, NIST, just National Institute of Standards and Technology, just came out with a report yesterday that said people have security fatigue. They're so sick of hearing about breaches, they're so sick of hearing about everything's exploitable, they just don't care anymore. Many companies are making the decision of like, to treat cybersecurity like a risk. What's the risk? You know, how much do we have to spend versus how much of a gain we get? How much of a pain in the ass does it make us using these systems versus, you know, it's far more efficient and less costly for us to do it this way, and we'll just take the insurance hit when it comes. Mostly for the consumers, you know, looking at my own behavior, looking at behavior of my friends, we're all cybersecurity people. We all know, you know, our credit cards can be hacked. We all know our identities can be found easily. We still do what makes the most efficient sense for us. Inherently, people are lazy. You know, they don't want to have to do a whole bunch of extra work. I tried to live for 2 weeks when I was at tour and a challenge. I tried to live completely anonymously and completely privately. It's exhausting. You try to think about every place your information goes, every place your data goes, everything you trust, everything you could possibly ever record, anything you've ever done. Trying to avoid cameras in the center of Boston is impossible. You end up wearing some stupid hat or, you know, something to defeat facial recognition, which I'm pretty sure doesn't work whatsoever, but it makes you feel better. And it becomes just exhausting to spend all your time thinking like a completely paranoid person, and you can't win. If someone in mass, you can do something like, you know, think of one of the big breaches. You know, there's something you can do. You can plan the company. You can get some sort of recovery, at least alerts to protect your identity. But if you're targeted by an individual or a foreign intelligence agency, you've lost. Unless you're super good and have somehow managed from birth to keep your identity private, secret, and secure all the way up through your current adulthood life. You might have a chance there, but even then, chances are you're in state databases, federal databases somewhere that someone will breach someday. You know, this come to light for people with clearance, the OPM breach. Everyone figured OPM was secure. It's got all the cleared people in the US in it. Everyone who's ever been cleared is cleared, currently cleared, where they work for, and what they do officially. You'd think that would be secure. That came out, and now it's believed to be in the hands of the Chinese, and they now have, and so everyone's like, well, nothing happened initially. Credit cards didn't get stolen, my identity didn't get stolen, nothing really happened. It's the fact that it's out there forever. It may take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You may go to vacation in China someday and get picked up then because they're patient and they'll wait. You as a consumer should make the decisions of use what you like to use what makes the most sense for you. You know, be aware of, you know, if my smart meter company sends me an email saying, hey, by the way, we have a software update, apply the update. But for the most part, I'm not going to choose the stuff that makes my life more efficient because it might have security issues. I just assume it all has security issues. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.